Can I have your water?
It's not water.
Oh, vodka. Nice. I like your style.
Yeah.
Is that vinegar?
Yeah.
Wrong episode.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew. I know you're expecting to see me and Josh doing a little cheers and slancha here, but unfortunately we had some audio-visual issues with this episode. For some reason our microphones would completely cut out at random points for no apparent reason. So we had to do some cuts and edits this episode. I know we said we were going to try to avoid that as much as possible, but due to the nature of this episode and us trying out new things, stuff happens. So if it cuts to my beautiful voice talking about what drinks are being made and such, this is your kind of pre-warning about that. So now, for your viewing and listening pleasure, what if we, episode 7, what if we tried Mixology?
How's it going, buddy?
It's going good.
Howdy.
Slancha.
Cheers.
Prost. With our water.
Yeah, but
There's a reason we did water today, guys.
look at all of this in front of us.
For those of you who are listening on Spotify, today might be the day to look on YouTube.
Today is the day to look on YouTube, in fact.
We'll do our best to describe what we're doing as well for you, but this is going to be kind of a more visual heavy podcast.
I
Because
feel like we're going to have to mute one microphone at some point
well,
and maybe pass microphones back and forth.
we might do that.
But
For the time being, howdy.
hello. If you are new here, this is the podcast, What If We?
Where we ask the question, what if we? My name is Andrew,
And I'm Josh.
and we're the co-founders, co-hosts of this podcast. Where today we're going to ask the question, what if we
Made cocktails.
made cocktails?
Talked about alcohol, made cocktails, do something that is near and dear to both of our hearts.
Yes, it is.
But before we do that, how you been, bud?
I have been good. As you guys can see, for those of you who are watching, we're inside for once, which is a change.
Woo!
New house. One, wanted to show off the kitchen a little bit, but two, weather was not permitting. We were going to be inside for part of it anyways. But we're doing the whole thing inside today because it's pouring rain on and off every 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just easier to not trying to figure out how to edit things back and forth in one take.
Yep.
So,
So yeah, we have our kitchen here. I'm not gonna do a house tour or anything like that. We got all our drinks out. We're ready. We're ready for it. We did a lot of prep for today, but no, things are good.
a lot of prep.
Went to the
A
store, got all
30-minute,
stuff
a
out.
30-minute notes app, and
But, yeah, but things are good. You know, got moved into the new house. Everything's in the house. And we just gotta find out where all our crap is going.
Yeah.
And
it's all coming together.
yeah, I'm getting a raise at my job finally.
Yeah,
We're really moving to full time. Had the full conversation with father, and things are good. Things are good. How about you?
good. Still at St. John's, so I haven't quit yet.
Thank
Not
God.
planning on quitting. I love my job. No, things are really good. You know, kind of getting into last couple of years I've spent living by myself.
Mhm.
So now I'm living with a new roommate. So getting used to another person's habits and okay, I have to make sure I do these things to keep the peace and things like that.
You're getting ready for married life, basically.
Oh yeah. Don't remind me. That's not I don't want to be married. Single ladies, if you're out there. No, I'm just kidding.
All 5 of our.
But no, things have been good. I had an interesting conversation yesterday.
Okay.
So I went down to the local cigar lounge, which is a block away from my work, and I was having this conversation with a guy who used to be in charge of the National Black Catholic Congress.
I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. And he was talking about how he used to be a coach at Lansing Catholic, was a youth minister for 30 years, led pilgrimages.
Cigar bars, you find the most interesting people.
Dude, I love it there.
The vibes are impeccable.
So yeah, I'm kind of getting into school has started for those who are, educated people. College, all the college kids are moving in this next week. So I'm taking Monday off to kind of mentally and physically prepare. And then Tuesday we hit the ground running with students moving in, so that's exciting. And I was working on our outreach calendar and stuff like that. I'm excited. I've got a couple barbecues and stuff like that planned. So yeah.
Nice.
It'll be a fun time.
All right. Well, let's just jump right into it.
Yeah. So, maybe first let's talk about why we drink.
Why we drink? Purpose of alcohol. First, our mandatory disclaimers. Talking about alcohol. If you are only enjoy alcohol if you are of the legal age, and please drink responsibly. You know your own limits.
We're not here to tell you how much you can or can't drink.
Everyone is different, but be responsible.
Be responsible.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, I think for me, I have a general rule like no more than 2 drinks in a single sitting, and I mean a single sitting meaning like an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think that's just a good rule of thumb. I mean, generally, like I'm not a fast drinker.
Yeah.
I drink my things pretty slowly, so it's like
I like to nurse them.
unless it's water, then I hold down water like crazy because I'm dehydrated all the time. But generally speaking, like knowing thyself, because I think there is this like culture of drinking
To get drunk.
Yeah, and it's really only an American thing.
It really is. Even
Because you and I have both spent time overseas.
and the only time that there is a people getting drunk overseas is when there's a big party. Like like this is the purpose of this party, and that's super rare.
Yeah, like the idea of like, okay, so like the prime example in American culture, St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, that's an American.
It's a purely American phenomenon. You don't have things like that happening. You go over to countries like Germany, and even at like things like Oktoberfest, that's not a thing.
Yeah. And they're drinking mostly beer.
But still, it's not a thing. They're not over here like slamming, 15.
They have a more healthy appreciation for alcohol. I think in America we treat it as very it's either go all out or it's don't touch it. I think that's a weird.
Yeah, you're either a teetotal or an alcoholic.
Yeah, and I think it's much rarer to find people who, I have one drink during the night.
I have drink, and even not every night. Like I think, I had like a beer yesterday, but normally unless I'm out with friends, I'm not just gonna crack open a drink.
I'll have like a finger of bourbon.
Yeah.
A couple nights a week kind of deal.
But this is something that both you and I particularly enjoy.
Yes.
Like this idea of cocktails, of liquor.
And we'll do an episode on beer and wine later.
Yeah, I think there's a place for that because
Yeah.
we also do have less so wine. I don't think you and I either really fall into the wine camp. We have beers that we enjoy.
Yeah.
But if you ask me if I was going to have beer or whiskey, I'm going to choose whiskey 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that they're for different occasions. Like if I want to sit and chat with someone, I'm usually going to make a drink. But if I'm just want to have some
watching the game,
watching
whatever it
games,
is.
yeah, I'll have beer. Like it's kind of.
But yeah, for you and I, this is something that I got into in college.
Mm-hmm.
I turned 21 when I was in Austria.
Yep.
And I came, the first bottle of alcohol, which I bought as a 21-year-old, was I didn't buy it actually, someone else bought it. Shout out Patrick McCarthy. Was a bottle of Glenfiddich 12-year single malt Scotch
I
whiskey.
think I have a bottle of that in my cabinet somewhere.
I've had better whiskeys now.
Yeah.
It's a good whiskey, but every time I would go to the Spar, which was the local grocery store.
Yep. That was your go-to.
That was the bottle that I always eyed, but I was 60 euros. I want to save it for a special occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the pleasure of I really didn't drink at all before I turned 21. I had a beer here or there.
I tried sips of beer and stuff when I was before that, but I never.
But
had
I got Austria being a 20-year-old and then coming back and being a 21-year-old.
Yeah, not
So
a lot of my friends had that privilege.
No,
It was
no,
fun.
No, so I got to come back and continue to enjoy those things, and then got exposed to making cocktails through our friend Evan.
Yep.
Shout out Evan. And I've loved it. Everything from an old fashioned to a martini to rum and coke. These things. There's just something great about it because it is something that it's oh yeah, come over. I'll make cocktails, right?
Yeah. And I know for me personally, Alton Brown, for all things food and drink, Alton Brown's kind of my go-to guy. But I watched episodes of Good Eats, and he explained, and a lot of the stuff that I have here is taken kind of from his tutelage. Just watching him make drinks and talk about the science, but also the art and the history of it.
Yeah,
is
you
just really,
definitely know the science more.
Yeah.
I think history, I kind of fall into that because I have so many cocktail books. But
yeah, but just the idea of knowing the science and the artistry of making drinks, and I'm weird. Like I love to eat and drink just like everyone else, but I prefer to watch people eat food that I made for them or drink a drink that I made.
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
It's my pride in a craftsman. You know, you have a fine carpenter, like, oh, that table looks great for me. It's make sure I make that great cocktail for someone, seeing them enjoy it. Like that's what fills me with pride more than enjoying it myself.
Yeah. Speaking of the history, then, like, you know more about the origin of the name, I think, which you were telling me about.
I will give a really quick history of drinking as a whole, and then go into like cocktails specifically. So, like back in the day, most of the time, mixed drinks like this.
No.
You would the most you would do is have a punch, basically like a strong hard.
Yeah, that's like American drinking. Like even before that, like we have early records of like how they discovered alcohol, like through spoiled grain that had been left in a clay pot, and then they drink and they're like, oh, this makes me feel funny.
Yeah. And you know, communal drinking was usually like, you know, it was beer or wine, because it was safer to drink than water. But punch was the first communal party. But as Americans, this is a very American thing. Cocktails are as a concept. Really during the 30s and 40s is when they kind of came into their own.
Even before that, with the old fashioned though.
Yeah. Let me finish. It's when it came into like cocktails really have a resurgence of because again, punch was always the drink of choice. You had your own secret punches and stuff like that. But eventually, everyone to express their own individuality. I want this drink. I want this drink. I want this drink. So that's where like they became pretty popular. The name cocktail though is interesting. So there's a lot of speculation on it. The most generally accepted theory. This is going to be a 2-minute example. So when you had horses who were they're working horses, they had these long tails. So to get the tails out of the way of the equipment, they would cut them. Snip the tails. And so that was called they were called cocktails because they looked kind of like a rooster's tail because they would stick up funny. But when you were trying to sell a horse, especially a little bit of an older horse, you wanted to make it fiery and spry and things like that. So in order to make them more fiery during like showings, these horse salesmen would they would take a suppository of like ginger and red pepper and shove it up there, and that would make the horse very angry and ornery.
It would make anybody angry.
Yeah, it would make anybody, but it made them very, very fiery and spry. So once bartenders started adding things like ginger, pepper, and all these other things to their assortment of garnishes and things and flavorings, people said, "Oh, that's like the stuff they would put in cocktail horses. Let's call this cocktails." So cocktails is from horse suppositories.
I hate it.
That's one of the generally accepted theories. It's obviously, etymology is a little watery across the board.
Yeah.
That's where we get the history of the word cocktail. But yeah, during the 60s was like the big surgence of the 30s and 40s when we started to get that surge. The 60s was the prime of the cocktail. And the big fruity, over-the-top drinks where you have 8 billion.
That's when you had, but even knowing there's a YouTube channel if you're called How to Drink. I'll show you.
Yeah, I watched many of his videos.
He had an episode on the history of the old fashioned, and it really starts in the 1870s.
Okay.
And it's not until the 1920s where you get today's modern iteration of it.
Yeah.
And people have added things now with smoking drinks and.
Yep. And there are so many variations of a simple drink, which we'll talk about in just a little bit.
Most drinks have a particular rule, just like 3 things. But before we get to that,
we should we can throw out some terms. Let's bring it back to basics. For those of you who don't drink or haven't made a lot of drinks, this is gonna be kind of like a how-to. So we're gonna start with your base liquors. Actually, here, why don't we let's move it real quick. We'll do the harmony so we can talk about base spirits, mixers, and then accents.
I agree.
All right. So when you're making a cocktail, most cocktails, a standard cocktail. Now, if you go to a bar or something like that, they might have you see like 8 or 9 ingredients in it. Some of them are ridiculous. A standard cocktail,
something you can make at home.
Something you can make at home. A classic cocktail has 3 things: a base spirit, which we have in this category here. This is something that's usually 40 proof or higher, which is 80 proof or higher, so 40% alcohol or higher, typically. Then you have a mixer. These are going to be your things that are either they're either no alcohol or very low alcohol, so like simple syrup or vermouth.
Yeah,
So,
bitters.
Yep, bitters. Those are things that are
Your liqueurs.
your liqueurs. Your accent. Typically, it's going to be it can be salt, it can be lime, citrus. It's something that it's never alcoholic, but it adds. It's more of like that lingering. It's the first and last thing you taste.
Yeah.
Typically. So that's how we have it kind of defined, and then we'll go into hardware and glassware in a second. So let's start with your base liquors.
Yeah, so your base liquors, there are really 6 different ones. So vodkas, aren't you?
Yep. So vodka, it's a neutral grain made with wheat. Classically people think potatoes, but it's usually not as good a vodka.
It's inferior vodka. Like
yeah.
you go, like Russian-made vodka is typically made with wheat. Polish vodka is typically made with wheat. Potato vodka actually comes out of the Irish potato famine.
Yeah. The idea with vodka is basically anything. It's usually 2 or 3 times distilled. Like here, Tito's. We'll mention brand names because we're not shy about that. This is distilled
Not a
6
sponsor.
times. Not a sponsor.
Definitely couldn't be.
No, but it's distilled 6 times. But the idea is it's colorless, odorless, and tasteless.
Yeah. Neutral grain spirit.
Yep. So, and when you're looking for vodkas, Tito's is kind of like your middle of the road. It's not the most expensive.
It's very good for making cocktails because, like you said,
Yeah.
I mean, most vodkas there's not a lot of difference.
Yeah. The
in
only time
flavor.
we're gonna like this one, we have this Svedka. This is intentionally flavored with strawberry lemonade, which we'll be using later. So that's vodka. Then we go on to gin. Now gin, a lot of people don't like gin. If you like vodka, gin is vodka with stuff basically. Vodka being water and alcohol, it is very easy to absorb certain flavor compounds. So gin is typically characterized by it's a neutral grain spirit tips to start, and then it's usually got juniper is like the defining characteristic of it. So here we have 2 James. This is one of my go-tos. I see we forgot the tequila. But Bombay and Hendrix, those are other examples of standard gins. Then we'll go on to the
Whiskeys.
whiskeys. So why don't you
I'm back.
give us the rundown on whiskey and bourbon,
I'm back.
which are 2 separate things. I'll let you kind of talk about those.
Yeah, whiskey is a general term for any spirit which has been aged in barrels over a certain course of time. So within that category, you have things like an Irish whiskey, a bourbon, a Scotch whiskey. You might throw things in like Canadian whiskey or I don't know if I'm leaving anything out, like Japanese whiskey.
Yep.
All of them tend to be flavored in oak barrels.
Yes.
Sometimes you'll hear like, oh, this one was flavored in a sherry cask or in an IPA barrel. They're always flavored in barrels.
Yep.
So Irish whiskey, nothing particularly special, made in Ireland. Scotch whiskey, there's a couple different kinds of Scotch whiskey. The different kinds of Scotch whiskey denote which part of Scotland they are from.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where it's from, you will have different flavor palettes. So this one is a heavily peated Scotch whiskey, meaning
Very smoky.
meaning that it's smoked from peat. They use peat to flavor the whiskey, and so it leaves a very heavily smoky. Some people would describe it like almost a gasoline-like flavor. And then you have bourbon. So bourbon is probably the thing that most Americans are familiar with. Bourbon itself has to be aged for at least 3 years, I think.
I believe 3.
In new oak barrels. So it can't be barrels that have been used for something else.
Yep.
So a lot of actually like Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskey will be aged in bourbon barrels.
Yep. Because they can be reused for that.
Because they can be reused.
But for bourbon, it cannot be. It has to be. Does bourbon still have to be made in America?
I think typically that's a general point. And also 51% corn mash.
Yep.
So you have wheated whiskeys, which are not technically classified as bourbons. So that's things like Maker's Mark.
It's Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels is not a wheated whiskey. So they're called wheaters and things like that. But that the aging of whiskey is what gives it the darker color and kind of takes some of the flavor that is missing in vodka and puts it in there.
And I want to clarify something about aging. This is a common misconception. So aging is a product of being in contact with the barrel. So, like if this Jameson was aged for 5 years and I hold it for 10 years, I don't have a 15-year bottle
No.
of whiskey. It's still just 5, so it only counts as being aged when it's still in contact with the barrel, because the aging is the process of basically osmosis, where the liquid moves into the barrel and then pulls stuff out, moving back and forth. That's where you get that darker color. So that takes care of the whiskeys and the bourbons. Let's go on to rum.
Rum. So we only have one type of rum here, but there are several different kinds. So this is Bacardi, standard rum. You can buy it anywhere.
Actually, I think I have another one too.
But typically, rum is made from a cane sugar. So from sugar cane.
Yep.
Started out.
Byproduct of molasses. That's really where rum came from.
Yes, in essence. You can make it with pure cane sugar.
Yep.
Simple syrup is just made with boiling sugar and water together.
Yep.
So if you allowed that to sit and to ferment, eventually you would get rum.
Yep.
And then you distill it to get a higher proof, drown some of the water, things like that. So there's several different kinds of rum, like Jamaican rums, Caribbean rums, Haitian rums.
Spice rums.
Spice rums, well.
Like Captain Morgan.
Well, so this is actually a spice rum.
Nope. It's not spicy. It's just a darker rum.
Oh, it's an aged rum.
Yep, it's just an aged rum.
Interesting. Okay, I will retract my statement.
Yeah. So
Typically, spiced rums do have like a darker characteristics, like a bourbon.
Yep.
If it's not darker, it's typically just a standard rum. Rum tends to be a little bit sweeter on the palate. It's used in a lot of tiki drinks.
Yep. If you have a Caribbean drink, 9 times out of 10, rum is the base.
Yeah. And you do have like brown sugar rums.
Yep.
Made from brown sugar. And things like that. And then, like you said, there's also aging with rums. I have a couple aged rums that I like. Diplomatico, I don't know if you've ever had that one.
No.
Appleton Estate's great.
Appleton Estate's one of like the standards. Like that's.
It's a great Jamaican rum.
Yep, we got that when we went to Sandals. Rum, really came as part of molasses being an effective byproduct of sugar production.
Yep.
So they had a lot of leftover molasses. Someone figured out you could ferment it. That's where you get rum. It's actually sugarcane and rum was what really developed a lot of the slave trade during the times, because sugar plantations took off because rum was so popular.
Yeah, it's not so much tobacco that led to that, but production of sugarcane, especially in the Caribbean. But we're not here to talk about that.
Nope.
We're here to talk about whiskey and tequilas and bourbons. And speaking of tequila,
we have the super cheap bulk tequila.
And then my personal favorite,
Terramana.
Añejo. So tequilas typically come in one of 3 varieties. A blanco, sometimes called silver, and an añejo, sometimes called gold,
Yep.
and a reposado. So
now, I want to clarify that actually. The añejo, so gold tequilas are not always better. Gold tequilas are actually usually mixed tequilas.
Yeah.
They've been mixed with things, so they're actually not as good. You're better off with a blanco, but they'll call them añejo, or instead of gold, añejo is different.
Yeah, so this is an añejo. It's actually really good. This is a pure agave añejo.
So we should clarify. Tequila is made with agave.
Yes.
Not cactus. People seem to think that for some
Well,
reason.
an agave is a type of cactus. It belongs to the family. So there is some truth to it. But typically it takes, 10, maybe even 15 years to grow an agave plant to maturity to produce tequila.
Yeah, it basically looks like a gigantic pineapple.
Yeah. So typically tequila is another almost neutral grain spirit. It does have a little bit of flavoring from the
A
agave.
little bit of flavor. It's usually, it's sweet and spicy is how I like to describe
Sweet
it.
and
It's
spicy.
got more of a bite than rum does.
Within tequila, you do have variants like a mezcal, which is an aged tequila. This one is aged in barrels, so this is an aged whiskey barrel, rested. But like you said, your blancos typically aren't aged. Your añejos are, and your reposados are also aged.
Yep.
But that's what gives it.
It's a difference of age.
Yeah, that's what gives it one to age. Once again, being in barrels or being in some type of situation which is going to age it. You do have some people going with aging, talking about like whiskey sticks. They do work to some extent, but it's not like adding like a whiskey stick is going to add like something like, oh, it's going to add like 3 years to your bourbon. That's not how that works.
No, like with moonshine, they'll add chips to try to add an oak flavor to something, but it won't.
But even then, the process of aging is from rapid heat expansion and rapid cooling, causing the barrel to expand. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So now that we finished talking about
Yeah, we're done with the
base liquors.
whiskeys and the base liqueurs.
I like how we can tell which one's your favorite because it's one you keep referring to.
This is still water, by the way. I
Yeah.
haven't switched yet.
Not vinegar. So let's talk about the base liqueurs real quick. So we're not going to go through all of them because there's way more of those, but typically
Yeah.
you're going to look at a liqueur or a kind of like a wine of some sort, like vermouth.
Red wine. Yeah.
Is a classic example. You have triple sec and blue curacao.
Yeah, typical liqueurs, like you can find a plethora of them, like, and stuff like this is like $5.99, so you can bulk up on stuff like this. Well, that's funny. I forgot to take the security tag off. But
You have your coffee liqueur. Simple syrup technically counts as a mixer.
Yeah, most liqueurs are made with a neutral grain spirit, like a tequila or a vodka.
And they've just been diluted and flavored.
Yes, typically. So like Kahlua, which is a very famous coffee liqueur, is made with rum.
Yep.
So it tends to be a little bit more sweet. And then you have things like bitters.
Which those are interesting because those along with simple syrup, which we have here, those kind of ride the line between being a mixer and an accent.
Depending on the bitters,
Yeah.
they can be very high in alcohol content. And there are people who do straight bitters. There's a bar up in Wisconsin which is known for making you just drink straight bitters.
Interesting, I've never heard of that. Because typically bitters I found are like the ones I get. I don't remember the brand, but
is it Angostura bitters?
Yeah, those are pretty low.
Yeah, I mean most of the time they're pretty low. This isn't orange bitters. You have things like chocolate bitters, Angostura bitters.
My dad has like a buttermilk. It's like buttermilk bitters.
Yeah,
it's basically
the best way to describe bitters is it's like Christmas spice.
It's liquid spice.
It just adds a little bit of that like Christmas spice-esque, like nutmeg almost flavoring. Yeah.
Those are the main
It's
ones.
a bittering agent.
Yeah. All around the whole song about how bitters make cocktails interesting.
Yes, that they do.
And then we have your accents. So typically, you're looking at maraschino cherries. Salt alt can be considered an accent. Citrus is the big one though.
Citrus.
Because with citrus, it's not about the juice necessarily. It's usually the peel and the essential oils.
Yes. Sometimes you'll have things like in a gin and tonic, cucumbers.
Cucumbers is a good example one.
Anything which is going to, in some way, shape, or form, be added to the drink to give it flavoring, not volume.
Yep, they usually add it at the end.
Yeah, because these are added mostly for volume.
Yeah.
Volume, flavor.
Yeah.
This does
volume, alcohol, flavor.
Yeah, this does add a little bit of flavor.
Some can be the primary flavor, like triple sec is a primary flavor in a lot of the more common drinks that you find at a bar nowadays. Like you're going for because it's
used in a margarita. It's used in a lot of things. Yeah. And cocktail picks are one of those things. They fall in the line of an accent. You take a peel of lemon, put it through there.
Yep.
Whatever it is. Different cocktails differently, so we'll kind of show that here in a little bit. But we have hardware.
Okay.
So hardware is what you're making the drinks in, what you're putting the drinks in for enjoyment.
Yep.
So most of these things people have seen, like shot glasses.
Yep. We'll go on the glass for in a second.
But,
so first thing, I'll hold this for a second.
so absolutely.
So
limited power.
We have your shaker. This is where most of your drink creation comes from. So this is a Boston shaker. It's two parts, basically just two cups that fit in each other. Shake it. A lot of people have ones where it's just a lid on top with a built-in strainer. I have one in there somewhere. I don't like them personally because I feel like they don't get a good seal on them a lot of the time, and they can cause issues. This uses a little bit more vacuum. This uses vacuum to basically pull it together. I think we grab the spoon. So I like Boston shakers. Plus, if you're making drinks that you can stir, you have 2 cups. So that's more of a typical shaker that a lot of people buy. Built-in strainer. Not a huge fan, but I do have it. It came with a set that I bought. And if I'm making a lot of different drinks, it's handy to have one. This is in my hand. You have your cocktail spoon. This is actually used for measuring. It does look flat. There's a slight indentation in it. Used for measuring very small things. And also for stirring your drinks. There's a difference between shaking and stirring. We'll go over that later. When it comes to measuring, you have your jigger and your pony. And
It has a second. Wait.
Yeah.
I've never known that this was.
Yeah.
I just referred to it always as a jigger.
Yeah. So
1 ounce and 2 ounce.
So the thing is, that's standardized. So typically, you're looking at something that is usually 1 ounce and 1 ounce. That was the old standard. Now a lot of them are 2 ounces and 1 ounce. There's a lot of different ones. I personally prefer this little number here. So it looks like a little pitcher, but it has the measurements, 2 ounce, 1 ounce, all that jazz here, and tablespoons and teaspoons.
So do you use this for more than just cocktails, or is this primarily?
It's primarily cocktails. I've used it for other things, but 9 times out of 10, that's my cocktail mixer or measurer.
I like that.
Muddler. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I don't like fruit muddled. People enjoy fruit muddled in their cocktails.
But for like a mint julep or for a mojito.
That's the only time it makes sense. Don't muddle fruit in your drinks. It's disgusting. It's gross.
We should clarify. These are our opinions. Some people will tell you otherwise. And drink how you like. This is just how we believe it to be.
Muddle things like you can muddle a peel. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You can muddle mint.
Yep.
That's fine. Any herbs you want to muddle, fine.
Basically, you put it in either the glass
sugar
or
cubes.
Yep.
Fine.
Sugar cubes with mint is a good one.
Yeah, but don't muddle fruit because
Then you get seeds and stuff in there. You gotta strain it,
there's that.
and you're over extracting it.
Well, the point of muddling is just to express the oil.
Yeah.
You're not trying to break the fruit apart.
Yeah. If you want the fruit flavor, get something that's been.
If you want just fruit flavor, just go get fruit juice.
Yeah. Strainer. Even though I have a Boston shaker and I can strain it, I like having this kind of strainer. It's a pretty standard one.
That's great.
Just fits over the top. Some people like to use like a julep spoon. Just kind of whatever floats your boat there.
There are different purposes for them. Some people say you shouldn't use this for like certain drinks. That you should use a julep spoon. For
Yeah, like juleps you wouldn't want because this spring kind of catches
all the
mints.
stuff. Yeah.
It's difficult. Corkscrew with a top opener. Most people have these anyways, but
It's a good bar tool.
Yep, I keep it for
It's fun to
wine.
fidget with.
And this is kind of the last specific one. I like a peeler for peeling fruits. I like this harp style, this Y peeler.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get better control with it. And then you have your skewers. There is one other piece of hardware, technically. Ice. Ice is software and hardware.
Yes.
So ice, used to chill your drinks, obviously, but also it's going to when you're mixing, a little bit of water is being expressed into it as you're shaking it. It chills them. Chilling does different things with different drinks. So it's not just going in there to cool your drink, but it's also like when it's in the glass, but it's cooling this. There's a lot of things you do with ice. So
and you can buy different ice molds. You can see. So they sell silicone molds at like Walmart, Meijer, Target, Kroger. Name your grocery store chain of choice.
Mm-hmm.
People are kind of like obsessed with the idea of clear ice.
It's a very long process, which I won't. To get
it's not
clear
necessary.
Ice. Yeah, it's just because it looks pretty.
It's not necessary. It's
the reason that you buy like those silicone molds is because having one,
and specifically like the round ice, technically has those
lowest surface area, so it will melt slower.
Yeah, diffusion purposes it melts slower. Doesn't leave the drink as much.
Yep.
But that's ice. Some of your hardware. So
shot glasses, if you just want to drink something straight.
Yep. So glassware, we have shot glasses.
We have a lot of these
yeah.
for some reason, even though we don't really do shots.
Yeah, shots are not fun.
I prefer to think of it as sipping glasses. Like if you want to try just a little bit of something.
Tasting glass. Like
yeah.
This is something new. I bought this. It's the coffee liqueur we're going to be using later. I want to taste it before we put it in a drink.
Yep. I don't want to bring out a whole glass. That punchki vodka you have that you bought.
The punchki vodka,
we still have it.
Yes,
yeah. We do. But being able to just try like a little bit. Typically these are 1 or 2 ounces. Just depends on the style. So then you're looking at your old-fashioned whiskey, your short glass,
rocks glass. Sometimes
these are just these are the standard glasses that we have for regular drinking. I have some specific ones for whiskey and bourbon and things like that, but they're literally the same thing as this, they're just decorated.
Yeah.
Got those, and then this is a Cosmo glass. I like it because I think it's a good alternative to your typical stemmed cocktail glass, like your martini glass, because these straight sides, kind of on a cocktail glass, they're a little bit wider. They slosh the drink over too much, and they're too big. I think it makes for an uncivilized drink. It's very difficult to stem sprig. So my parents bought me these as an alternative when I went to Franciscan, so I could have my martinis still. And then you have your highball glass.
Yeah, scotch or soda.
Gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic.
Anything that's going to be served, typically anything that's served with a lot of ice or a straw.
Mint julep, yeah.
I put in this. Anything that's gonna be sort of like one ice cube or straight up going here. So those are your non-stems.
That covers everything on here.
Get the stem ones.
Oh, you have one stemmed glass, I guess.
Oh, I don't have the other ones out, but we don't really need them. Have wine glasses. Have your champagne flutes. Those most people have those. This is my personal pick for stem. This is a Nick and Nora glass. I don't know why it's called that, but what I like is they're a little bit smaller than cocktail glass, and if you notice, it kind of kicks back, so it's up and then goes back in a little bit. I think it makes for a more civilized pour, and it's much easier to. They have a little bit thicker stems. They're much easier to sip out of. You're not going to slosh all over the place. So these are my go-to for anything that's not served on ice. I'll usually put ice in the glass while making the drink, ditch the ice, and then pour the drink. That way it stays nice and chilled. That's the reason for the stem. Keep your warm mitts off of it. So from that's kind of our big smorgasbord of basic cocktail stuff. Let's get into some classic drinks.
We're gonna try, because we already know this is gonna be a bit of a longer episode, to do this as quickly as possible. So I'm actually gonna move to the front to make the first one. You want to kind of gather your supplies
You want
for
to put
the
that
second
in
one.
while I'll let you take the lead here.
So, let me not turn my back to the camera. We're still learning camera etiquette.
Yep. Thank you, Gemma, for your advice. We're working
Shout
on
out
it.
Gemma again. So the first drink we're going to try to attempt to make, I don't even know if I'm in the shot now.
Yeah, you should be.
Okay. Is an old fashioned. So typically an old fashioned is just something that is made with sugar and a whiskey. Can be bourbon, can be other things. I'm going to use bourbon because that's typically how it's most made. So I'm going to start.
Now, quick question for you. What is the difference between a Manhattan and an old fashioned? I've heard people use them interchangeably. Okay. I've heard people use them
Vermouth is
interchangeably.
used in a Manhattan, I'm fairly certain.
We're not experts. We're
I mean, I have to look. I genuinely still use cocktail recipe books because I only make a limited.
I have a huge repertoire of cocktail books.
So this, okay. So typically,
I think, did you take the...
Some
Some of the stuff is new, so we haven't opened them yet.
So typically, I will use a sugar cube, but we were unable to find sugar cubes. So you want typically a sugar cube or 1 teaspoon of raw sugar. In this case, since we were going to buy this anyways, we're going to use a bar spoonful of syrup.
Which, if you want to be measuring specifically, like a 1/4 teaspoon.
Yeah, it's more than enough for the drink.
Actually, no, I'll just use
The next thing will be your bitters. Now, if you had a sugar cube, what you would do is you would soak the whole thing in bitters. And you would use your muddler to kind of slosh it around. There we go. In this particular case, I'm just going to drown the whole thing. 10 or so dashes, swirl it around, get it mixed up. You can smell that like Christmassy, Christmassy
But it's not
spice.
overpowering, though.
Nope, this is an orange bitters, so there is like a hint of like a citrus orange.
Yep.
Close that as much as I can, put it to the side. I don't think we'll need it for the rest of the day. Andrew's gonna peel. You can do both a lemon and a lime peel.
I got you.
So
Perfect. Look at that, no pit.
oh, perfect.
That's
So-
why I like the harp style.
So, and then the next part is going to be your bourbon. 2 ounces of bourbon.
Go.
So, at this point, you basically have an old fashioned. Nice stir.
Scoop.
Depending on who you ask, whole cube, cubes like this, no cube. It's all personal preference at this point.
And we want to encourage you to be able to play around with these recipes as much as possible. Find what works best for you and what you enjoy. We'll
Now-
later.
A lemon peel.
Right there for you.
So typically you'll see a lemon peel on like, or maybe an orange peel, any type of citrus really.
You should do Neil lime as well.
I don't necessarily need it.
Okay.
depending on who you ask, you can do. I like a good cherry, and then a citrus of some kind. You know, they'll put it in there, drink, voila. Oh. Mm. Mm-hmm.
So quick breakdown. So you got your base beer is
Base beer, bourbon, whiskey, an aged whiskey.
yes.
Can be bourbon, can be a Irish whiskey like Jameson. I would not recommend a peated Scotch, but like a blended
Be a little
Scotch
tart
or an
at that point.
Islay or a Speyside, not an Islay, Highland Scotch. You don't want something super smoky. Now people will make this with will smoke it old fashioned with the smoke topper.
That's different.
It's different. It's a different type of smoke. So I've got in here base spirit, which is whiskey. My accent, my mixer, which is the simple syrup and the bitters, both are together. And my accent is a lemon peel, a cherry. Sometimes people do an orange peel.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever floats your boat on that. So that's an old fashioned.
Okay.
Do a quick mic change. Power is off.
Yep. So we're just going. We're
We're
flying.
rolling with it.
We're rolling with it. Make a martini. Now, some people like vodka martinis. I like gin martinis because again, my thought is vodka. I already got ice in there, so gin is just vodka with juniper. So I'm using 2 James here. This is kind of my go-to. Hendrix is another one I really like.
What glass are you using?
I'm going to use the Nick. Actually, no. I'm going to use the Cosmo for this one because it's more like it's based on.
I'm going to try to fit the margarita and the Nick and Nora then.
Okay.
Can you hand me the other shaker? Let's go make it in the other one.
For later. But that's neither here nor there. Sorry, this is a little bit different episode. We're trying something new here. So for me, I like my martinis pretty dry. I've been adapting my recipe from the last time we talked. So
Finally, you come to the side of it no longer needs to be an extra dry martini.
So what I do is I do 1.5. Actually no. So what I do, I start off with the vermouth. Actually, I like extra dry vermouth. Some people like sweet vermouth. I think that kind of loses the essence of what a martini is. So I'm gonna go with about 3/4 of an ounce in here. And so there's shaking and stirring. I'm going to actually introduce a new one, sloshing. Basically, just trying to coat all the ice cubes with the vermouth. And then I'm going to, here. We probably should have washed that, but it's fine, whatever. And then I do 2 ounces of the gin. So for here, it's that, and then just a little extra. So then the big difference here is, you can also wash that for me real quick. I'm just gonna slosh for this one. Shaking a drink chills it way more than stirring will. So I'm gonna stir mine. Sorry about the little bit of extra noise here. Once I see that condensation there, I don't really wanna go much more than that because then we're gonna lose those subtle flavors of the gin itself because each one is a little different flavoring. I'm gonna grab my strainer here. That's been strainer. Again, balsam shaker, I could be using it, but since I'm not shaking, no point. And then, yeah, it creates a pretty civilized amount right there, 3 ounces. And then, I'm gonna take my lemon peel that I have here. So, with martinis, you got a lot of options. You could put a little olive juice or an olive in there, make it kind of a dirty martini. I like a little bit of smoked sea salt, make it a smoky, dirty martini. This though, I'm kind of gotten into using the idea of the lemon. So I'm just rubbing it together to kind of get some of the essential oils break up, and then I'm just gonna kind of wipe the edge of the glass there with it. Nice and clear. Makes me think of James Bond. Except for he wanted his shaken.
This
not
always
stirred,
makes
and
me
vodka.
think of like 1920s like speakeasies.
Yeah, it's a very classy drink.
It's your best martini ever.
I know.
That might make me a martini man.
Yeah, the lemon adds a little bit different. I like the salt and the dirty martini. That's more my go-to. But when you're trying to get someone into it, the lemon is really the way to go.
All right, so that's martinis.
Hey everybody, this is Andrew doing a quick voiceover here. Unfortunately, we had some audio issues this episode, and we're not really sure why. So I'm going to record a quick voiceover to explain what was going to happen in this scene, and I'll probably have to do at least one or two more to make the video make sense. Here, Josh is supposed to be making his margarita recipe, which he is going to use some basic tequila. I believe he uses the Jose Gold. Use about 2 ounces of that. About an ounce of triple sec, although I personally don't think you should have triple sec in a margarita. That's just my opinion, though. And then a few shots of agave to go with that. Maybe half an ounce if you want to measure it. Then cut half a lime, squeeze it. Fresh squeezed lime juice is always better than the pre-packaged stuff at the store, but we'd rather use pre-packaged stuff at the store than not make your own margarita. Clamp on the lid with ice, and his exact words were, shake it until you can't feel your hand. Once you finish that, then strain and pour into a glass that has been rimmed with salt. I like to use a little bit of agave on the rim of the rim of the glass to hold the salt. That way we get a nice little sweet and salty aspect to it.
All right, next up is you with the rum
daiquiri.
drink.
Yeah.
The rum drink. Go ahead, go around.
Yeah, daiquiris are kind of one of those drinks that I decided that I don't typically like rum, but one of my friends wanted to kind of get into rum. That was the drink she liked. So I said, I'm going to learn to make a really good daiquiri for you. So,
Do you still need the rum?
I do not need it removed. You're going to have quick rinse for me. So daiquiris you can typically find are like blended and they have a lot of flavorings in them. I don't like that. I want to be able to taste my rum. Want to go and kind of give me 2 scoops of ice in there?
2 scoops of ice?
Yep. Set that right there. So I'm going to go with 2 ounces of rum. Now this is where you want to break out the good rum for it, because this is going to be the main, again, this is going to be one of the more bulk drinks for it. So Bacardi's a good standard one. Appleton Estate's better, obviously, but it's not quite for what I want to use for this drink. So I got the rum in there. Then simple syrup. I'm going to use about half an ounce, which is, it's a little sweet at that point, but because this is basically just rum as the main thing, we want a little extra sugar in there just to kind of help cut some, if there's any little harshness to it. And then, give me that squeezer and the lime, please. So, fresh squeezed lime juice. You're going to need about an ounce, which is typically about half a lime. You get a little bit more, it's not the end of the world. This is here to accent that and give it a little bit of extra, little something out of it.
A little something.
Even though it's a straight up drink, I do like this shaken because I really want to get this nice and chilled. I think a daiquiri unchilled, not cold, is pretty lame. The primary purpose of shaking is to incorporate the ingredients better. So like if you're doing like a whiskey sour that has like an egg in it, which is something that some people do, just to really be able to incorporate it, it's much more vigorous. So for me, I'm going to try it. I should do this. And because it's being served straight up, it goes in the stem glass. The Cosmo works because it has that basically ball of glass. I've not used that one though.
Are you going to need it for what?
I don't think I will.
Okay, I'll use
I think you were supposed to use that for your margarita and you didn't.
I'm going to use this for the...
So, this is my daiquiri. The lime is very prevalent. The rum kind of slips in there. It gives you, it's very smooth, I find. Kind of takes off the edges.
All right.
Would you like to try it?
Yes. Sorry.
You're good.
Grabbing things from my other drink.
All right, now here's where we were supposed to do our own cocktails. I was going to do one that I created. Josh was going to do his variation on an espresso martini so we could demonstrate the principles of using the base spirit, a mixer, and an accent. Unfortunately, we had a ton of audio issues here, so we are promised we are working on trying to get better mics and being more prepared. This was an experiment of an episode, so we are going to try to make sure we address those in the future. Um, Normally, we would just re-record an episode, but because of the type of episode we did here, it's not really feasible. So we're just going to do our best with these voiceovers and hope that you understand. For the Blue Pucker, it's a drink that I made for several of my friends who don't like the taste of alcohol but wanted to drink with friends. So it starts with 1.5 to 2 ounces of strawberry lemonade vodka. You can get away with regular vodka if you can't find the strawberry lemonade variety. Pour that into a highball glass. Follow that with a couple little scoops of ice. It should be about halfway to 3/4 of the way filled with ice. And then I just pour enough sweet and sour mix to come up almost to the top of the glass. Then pour probably about a 1/2 ounce of blue curacao on the top, and don't stir it. You want to let it kind of trickle its way down and creates kind of like a tequila sunrise effect. Or I guess a reverse tequila sunrise. So that's the Blue Pucker. For Josh's, he bought this really good coffee liqueur, which we spent a couple minutes talking about because it's tequila based rather than like Kahlua, which is rum based. So it's a little less sweet. But basically, you take a few ounces of vodka or tequila, whatever your persuasion is. Pour that into the bottom of your mixer. Add about 2 to 3 ounces of espresso that's been chilled. About 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce of the coffee liqueur. And then if you want to add a little bit of sweetness, some simple syrup or agave, whichever you like. We went with agave here because it matched the tequila that was in the coffee liqueur. Give it a good shake because you're trying to make an emulsion of the fat that's within the coffee and the water phase of the coffee and the other liquids. Shake it till it's good and cold, and then serve straight up in a chilled glass with a stem. So that's our take on 2 other drinks that we've created / made our own versions of using the principles. It's at this point that we start talking about our call to action, which our call to action to you this week is make your own drink, experiment. Everyone deserves the chance to make drinks at home. It's a great way to save money because a couple of bottles of liquor are about as expensive as 2 drinks at your typical bar these days. So go out and give yourself a try. We transitioned to talking about different books that you can do, and that's where we're going to leave this recording for you. But I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the episode. God bless.
Go out, get a recipe book, buy a couple of standard ones, experiment, and find something you like. And if you find a drink that you really like, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Throw a recipe in there.
If you want recommendations for books, I'll drop some in the description when this drops. But things like, at least in the Catholic world, things like Drinking with the Saints.
Classic.
There's literally a book called just Cocktails.
I have a huge collection, and there's a lot of really fun theme ones. Like I have one that's themed around Gotham City.
Yeah, there's so many.
It allows you to express
So drop
individuality.
drop in the comment if you have a favorite cocktail book. What is it? Where we can find it? If you have a favorite drink, what is it? Where how do you make it? What are things that you like, dislike? But challenge this week to go deeper in your own life. Make a drink, make a cocktail, and enjoy it with a friend.
Yes, drinking alone is good.
sad.
Well, having a little bourbon while you're contemplating life is one thing. Just drinking by yourself though,
Yeah.
not quite there.
Yep. And so with that, let's wrap up how we usually do. Andrew, how are you going deeper this week with your life?
I'm going deeper in a new way, obviously, because that's what going deeper means. So we moved, and because we moved, we're a lot further away from where we work. So I've had to become, and I'm not much of a planner. At our old place, we were right by work, but now it's a bit of a drive. So I can't just say, if I forget something, I'll just go there. So I've gotten really intentional about using my planner. I bought a planner. I've been using it, scheduling my meetings, trying to coordinate with Miriam a lot more, trying to increase our communication as husband and wife about when we're going to do things and where we're going. Because gas is expensive. And I'm just trying to be more intentional about how I'm using my time. Because if I forget something at work, it's at least an hour round trip for me to go get it. And that's just a waste of my day, waste of gas, stuff I could be doing other things with. So I've become really intentional about using my planner and scheduling my time and being effective with it. especially with the craziness of the move, trying to make sure I have every free minute I have is either here, work, spending time with my wife, or unpacking. So I'm really trying to squeeze every minute out of my day that I can. So I've been really intentional about planning my day and planning my week using my planner.
Great.
How about you? What do you up to?
Yeah, so starting a new job, like kind of where the place I work at is located is right in the middle of East Lansing, like maybe 2 blocks from the student union at MSU, and we have a lot of what I like to call our homeless neighbors, our homeless friends that are living on the streets in that area.
People who experience homelessness, I think, is the term.
I'm not gonna.
Well, that's what Catherine would like to mention that because we're not trying to put a tag on them as homeless.
No, but I mean, you ask them, I'm homeless. They're gonna. But and I get why we use that, but like I call them my homeless friend because it does
I like that.
emphasize.
I like that.
You're my homeowner friend. I'm my renter friend. But one of the things that's been happening quite frequently, and I've only been there for a month, is we'll have people come in who are really just trying to get out of the heat, get out of the weather, and there's kind of been, I don't want to say this attitude, but like, okay, find out what they need, get them out of here, right? We don't want them disturbing other people. And I'm like, I get that to some extent, but the least I could do is do what Jesus did, which is just sit with them for 30 minutes, sit with them until like, I've given them what they've come seeking, which they've come seeking a place of rest.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I can make my own self that place of rest, like, great. And that's kind of just like, that's been very healing in some ways for me of like, seeking a place of rest in my own life, and how people have become that, and how I can become that place for others. For both my students that I'm going to be meeting in the next week, and then also for anybody that just crosses my path.
Nice.
So.
I love that.
Yeah, with that, this was
a heck of an episode.
Yeah, this is a long episode, man. I told you it was going to be long.
I know.
I think we should have divided the episode, but we're not going to get into that now.
So, let's enjoy it. Actually, give me that margarita. Because next week, we asked the question, what if we remembered Jimmy Buffett?
Rest in peace, homie. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for joining with us, and enjoy your drink.